Welcome to episode 7 of Discovery to 7 of Discovery to Solutions.
I sat in a board presentation last year where a CTO showed a demo of their new AI system answering complex questions about company policy. Flawless. The board loved it. 3 weeks later, in a routine review, we found that same system had been confidently answering employee queries about a parental leave policy that had been updated 6 months earlier. 40 something employees had made decisions based on information that was wrong. The AI was impressive, the deployment was not.
It sounds more relevant than ever right now. That story is the entire LLM enterprise conversation in one paragraph. The technology is genuinely remarkable. The deployment gap is genuinely real. 88% of organizations are now using AI in at least one function. That's not hype, that's McKinsey's 2025 State of AI. But only 12% are capturing disproportionate value from it. This episode is about what separates the 12% from the 82 who are spending real money and getting very little back. Welcome to Discovery to Solutions, where we bring technology conversations from the whiteboard to reality. I'm Kavya Malhotra.
And I'm Karan Khanna. We've been circling LLMs across almost every episode of this show. In the AI data readiness episode, in RAG, in governance. Today we go directly at the question everyone in this industry is either asking or pretending they've already answered. What is actually working in enterprise LLM deployments right now? And what is still just a very expensive demo that hasn't survived contact with production?
Enterprise GenAI spend hit $37 billion in 2025. That's 3.2 times what it was in 2024. Some of that is delivering genuine ROI. Some of it is AI theater, initiatives that exist because a board asked about AI strategy, not because anyone identified a problem worth solving. By the end of this episode, you'll know which category your current initiatives actually fall into.
Let's start with what's genuinely working, because it absolutely is working in the right context. The pattern across every successful enterprise LLM deployment we've seen or have been involved in is the same. The use case is bounded, the data is usable, the output is measurable, and there's a review path when something goes wrong. That sounds like table stakes. In practice, most organizations skip at least two of those four.
The highest ROI use case in production right now consistently is internal document Q&A, sometimes called knowledge assistant or enterprise search. The pattern. You have a large body of internal documents, policies, contracts, technical manuals, compliance requirements. Staff spend hours searching, rereading, and chasing colleagues for answers that exist somewhere in that corpus. A well built RAG system, and we covered why well built matters in detail. Last episode cuts that research time dramatically. A financial institution we know cut employee research time by 50% after deploying an LLM based internal search system. That's not a benchmark number. That's the measured output time, before and after.
Second, document classification and triage. This is the use case that doesn't get enough attention because it's unglamorous. Support tickets, insurance claims, contract clauses, regulatory filings, categorizing this at volume used to require people reading documents and tagging them manually. LLMs do this at enterprise scale, with accuracy that matches or exceeds human reviewers on well defined classification schemas at a fraction of the cost per document. A global consultancy we know of reduced hiring cycles by 40% using LLMs for resume pre screening and candidate triage. Not replacing hiring decisions, triaging the inbound volume so humans spend their time on the candidates worth reviewing.
Third, summarisation. And this is the one that sounds too simple, which is why people underestimate how much value it creates. Legal teams summarizing contracts and case files, healthcare clinicians summarizing patient records, analysts summarizing earnings calls before a decision window closes. These are all knowledge intensive, high friction workflows where the LLM isn't replacing the human judgment. It's doing the reading so the human can spend time on the thinking. A B2B sales firm cut proposal preparation time by 60% using an LLM to draft tailored pitch content from product data. Sales cycles shortened, win rates improved. The common thread across all three of these: the LLM is doing a bounded cognitive task, reading, sorting, summarizing, that a human could do but shouldn't have to do 1,000 times a day.
And here's the diagnostic question that tells you immediately whether your LLM use case has real potential. Can you describe the task in one sentence? Tell me exactly what good output looks like, and tell me how you'd catch a bad output before it reaches a decision maker. If all three answers are clear, you probably have a viable use case. If any of them is, we'll figure that out as we go. You have a pilot with an unclear success condition, which is most of what's currently consuming $37 billion.
Now, the part most vendors skip at their own conferences: what doesn't work yet, and specifically what you should not be deploying in production in 2026, despite what the keynote suggested.
Fully autonomous multi step agents are the biggest current gap between what's being sold and what's actually shipping. The pitch: an AI agent that can take a complex business objective, close this deal, resolve this customer issue, process this claim, and execute it end to end without human involvement. The reality: 77% of autonomous agent projects never reach production. And of the 23% that do, the ones that survive are almost all narrowly scoped, single workflow deployments with humans in the loop at critical decision points. That's not what was on the keynote slide.
The failure mode for agents in production is specific, and it's important to understand it clearly. Errors compound across multi step workflows in a way they don't in single turn interactions. If step 3 of a 7-step process makes an incorrect assumption, steps 4 through 7 confidently execute on a wrong premise. And the agent often self corrects by accessing more systems, making more decisions, and deepening the problem before anyone has visibility. Gartner estimates that over 40% of agentic AI projects will be cancelled by 2027 due to escalating costs, unclear business value, and inadequate risk controls. That's not a prediction about the technology failing, that's a prediction about the deployment approach failing.
Second, and I want to be very precise here, LLMs are not replacing experienced analysts, data scientists, or strategic decision makers. Not yet. They're augmenting the reading, the drafting, the initial triage, the judgment layer. What does this mean? What should we do? Still requires human efforts. I've seen organizations announce AI driven insights platforms that are fundamentally a summarization layer on top of dashboards that nobody trusted in the first place. Summarizing bad data faster is not intelligence, it's just faster noise. The organizations that are actually winning here are not the ones replacing analysts. They're the ones giving analysts better first drafts. So analysts can spend time on the interpretation instead of information gathering.
The useful mental model here is human in the loop versus human out of the loop. In 2026, almost every enterprise LLM use case that's delivering real ROI keeps a human in the loop at the decision point. The moment you remove that human and make the system fully autonomous, at meaningful scale, on real enterprise data with real business consequences, the reliability gap becomes the story. Human in the loop is not a limitation of the technology. It is the right architecture for where the technology is right now.
Now let's talk about the thing that surprises almost every CTO 3 to 6 months into a production LLM deployment: the token bill. Here's the thing about LLM costs that doesn't show up in a pilot. At a small scale, API costs are invisible. You run a few thousand queries, the monthly bill is noise. At enterprise scale, token costs are not noise. They are a meaningful, growing line on the infrastructure budget, and they compound in ways nobody modeled at the pilot stage.
Let's put actual numbers on this because this is where the conversation moves from abstract to very specific. Running a production workload at 10 million total tokens a day, which is not a large enterprise deployment, on a standard GPT level API at current pricing cost, roughly $3,750 a month. Scale that to 50 million tokens a day, which is what a mid sized company processing documents, support tickets, and internal queries at real volume might actually generate. And that monthly figure approaches $19,000. Annually, that's over $225,000. And those figures assume you've optimized your prompt architecture, you're batching where possible, and you're not running frontier models on tasks that don't need frontier models. Most organizations starting out are doing none of those three things.
Which is where the open source versus proprietary conversation becomes genuinely important, and not just as a philosophical debate. The capability gap between frontier proprietary models and the leading open weight models has closed dramatically. Llama, DeepSeek, Quen. They're not GPT-5 on the hardest reasoning tasks, but they're within 70 to 90% of frontier capability on the bounded, well-defined tasks we just described. Document summarization, classification, structured Q&A, and they run at 5 to 10 times lower per token cost through a hosted API, with the option to self-host if your volume and data sensitivity warrant it.
So, the honest decision framework for model selection under 1 billion tokens a month, just use a proprietary API. The simplicity, reliability, and support outweigh the cost difference at that scale. Between 1 and 30 billion tokens a month, look seriously at hosted open source APIs. Same developer experience, dramatically lower cost, sufficient capability for bounded use cases. Above 30 billion tokens a month. Or if you have strict data residency requirements, regulated data, or air gap deployment needs, self hosted open weight models become the right answer. But bring the engineering headcount to support it. This is not a set and forget infrastructure decision.
And there's a cost that nobody puts in the initial business case: prompt engineering and model maintenance. Your prompts will break when the underlying model updates. Your output quality will drift as your data evolves. The evaluation harness you need to catch that drift before it reaches users, that requires engineering time, not just an API key. The companies that budget only for tokens are the ones that come back 12 months later saying AI was more expensive than expected. The companies that budget for tokens, engineering, evaluation, and iteration are the ones with a real cost model.
All right, a CTO calls us. They have an LLM budget, a board mandate, and a list of 12 AI initiatives on the roadmap. What do we actually tell them?
First, cut the list to 2 or 3. Not because the others aren't interesting, because shipping 2 things well is worth infinitely more than running 12 pilots that each produce a deck and no production system. Prioritize by 4 criteria in this order. 1. Is the task bounded and describable in one sentence? 2. Is the data actually available and trustworthy? 3. Can you measure the output quality, not just track that calls were made? 4. Is there a human review path when the system gets it wrong? Every initiative that fails all 4 of those gets shelved, not cancelled, shelved, until one of those things changes. Most of the list will be on the shelf.
Second, get the cost model right before you scale anything. Map your token volume at production scale, not pilot scale. Include prompt engineering time, evaluation infrastructure, and model update maintenance. Then decide whether proprietary API, hosted open source, or self hosted is the right cost structure for what you're actually building. The organizations that scale an expensive prototype and then try to cost optimize under budget pressure pay twice: once for the infrastructure they built, once for the migration they didn't plan. Build the right model selection into the architecture from the start, not from a benchmark chart, from your actual volume projections.
And third, for anyone considering fully autonomous agents, design human in the loop into every workflow where a wrong output has a real business consequence. Not because the AI can't be trusted in theory, because you don't have the monitoring, the circuit breakers, and the organizational trust in the system yet to remove human oversight safely. When the system has 6 months of production history, a clean error rate, and documented behavior across edge cases, then have the conversation about reducing oversight. Not before. 77% of autonomous agent projects fail in production. The 23% that ship are the ones that started with more human oversight than they thought they needed, not less. And the simplest frame that cuts through all of this: LLMs are the best reading and writing tools ever built. Deploy them as reading and writing tools, fast, scalable, tireless, with humans making the final judgment calls. The organizations capturing disproportionate value are not the ones that replace the most humans. They're the ones that freed the most human time to do the work that only humans should be doing.
So, LLMs in the enterprise, genuinely transformative for bounded, data-ready, measurable tasks. Document Q&A, classification, summarization, these are working now at scale with real ROI in production. Fully autonomous agents at enterprise scale, not yet, not reliably, not without the monitoring and governance that most organizations haven't built yet.
And the cost is real, non trivial at scale, and almost always underestimated at the pilot stage. Get the cost model right, match the model to the task, not to the benchmark, and build the evaluation harness before you need it, not after the first regression. The 6% capturing disproportionate value from enterprise AI aren't smarter than the other 82. They started smaller, measured more carefully, and scaled only what actually worked.
If your organization has a list of AI initiatives longer than 3 items and none of them have a clearly defined success metric yet, that conversation is worth having before the next budget cycle, not after 12 months of spend with nothing in production. We've helped build the ones that ship. We've also cleaned up the ones that didn't. The difference is almost always in how the first 3 months were run.
Next episode, we're talking about a problem that's quietly affecting every data and AI project we've discussed on this entire show. The data engineer shortage is getting worse, not better. Fabric architect demand is up 180% year over year. Universities are not producing enough of the right people, and the skill gap between traditional ETL developers and what a modern data engineering role actually requires has never been wider. If your project timelines are slipping and your recruiting team can't tell you why, this one will answer that question.
Thus, see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to us on Discovery to Solutions.